Greetings, salutations, and all good things in between. What's up, everyone? Matt here. Happy Friday. Welcome here. We got a special guest today. You've probably seen it on the thumbnail. Steve's back. We're going to dive into some stuff that we didn't cover last time a little bit. We're going to go over some YouTube comments from the last time Steve was on. In the news, I don't know if you were caught by this or not. There was another outage. I'll kind of go over that. There's been some updates for some YouTube products, or not YouTube, but some Google products, specifically Google Sheets and Google Drive, that are worthy of note. So I'm going to go over those briefly. And then towards the end of this, Steve and I are going to do a deep dive into action looping. Why not? He's the guy that came up with the whole original post anyways, right? So if you got any questions about looping or for Steve or anything else, put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. Let's get to it.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Right, let's get to it. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Coyle.
Hi, everybody.
He's back. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming back on, man. I do appreciate it. Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. We talked about this last time about kind of maybe making this like a regular thing, and I could see this kind of being a cool thing where, once a month we get together like this and. Yeah. Deep dive into something.
Sure, absolutely. Sounds good to me.
You know what I mean? So yeah. Just to I just want to get started. I have a question. So did you go have a chance to review any of the comments that people had from our last stream?
I started to read through them, but I did not get very far. Sure. Unfortunately, I can't say I'm familiar with what people were asking.
Well, okay. Well, the nice thing is that there really wasn't very many questions put inside this aspect, but there was a whole bunch of really good, a lot of really nice comments. I just kind of want to go over some of those right now. So, Brad, good friends with Brad, right? Legasic, yeah. He says, "Hey Matt and Steve, great show. Just wanted to thank Steve for all his help in the community. Without guys like Steve and yourself, we would take so much longer to learn AppSheet. Thanks, guys."
I agree. Yeah, and I'm happy to help out. And obviously, Matt's been around forever. And thank you, Matt, because I learned from you. So.
Thank you, mate. I've learned so much from you. See, this is the thing about the community that makes it so that I love so much. It's like a reciprocal thing. Like I give, other people give, and we're all learning from each other. It's fantastic.
Well, I think one of the maybe something that some people don't think about is that those of us who participate who are mostly answering the questions and helping others, it is also an awesome opportunity for us to learn because people pose these questions that we may never have thought of before. Or they're coming into a problem from a much different perspective than we may have been, and I think that's what's most interesting to me is being exposed to these new perspectives on old problems, on existing problems. So that's thank you all for posing your questions out there, because even the so-called stupid questions are not always stupid. They present things in a new light that we like to see.
Absolutely, yeah. And to be honest with you, those stupid questions are usually some of the ones that I kind of like the most. Mm-hmm. Jack Ferret, he said, "I started working in AppSheet in 2020, coincidentally right after an essential feature was released. Since then, I have over 4,000 hours in AppSheet and my career orbits around it. I never had to ask 100 questions or more because you guys already answered them for me. Thanks for all the hard work in making the magic AppSheet something I could understand and build in."
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Right? 4,000 hours. I don't keep track of all of my time that I'm working. It'd probably be a really scary number.
Well, 4,000 hours, that's 2 years of full-time work, right? 2,000
Okay.
hours.
Okay. All right. I see where you're going with
Good
that.
deal.
All right. Oh man. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
Getting up there to like 10,000s then probably
Oh, yeah.
for.
Oh, yeah.
What's that saying? It takes 10,000 hours to become a master or something?
Next, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Um, everything else for the comments. Jared Massees, it says great show. Ebenezer Apong, probably said the last one wrong. Kudos guys for a great show. Paola Di Leo said that terribly. YouTube needs to implement a way to give videos more than one like. That's funny. I like that one. But yeah, a lot of love, and there's more love outpouring inside the chat. Thanks, guys. Hi, everybody that's joining us. It's much appreciated. You guys,
Yeah, thank you very
any
much.
questions you got, give them in there. We'll get to them at the end. I just wanted to kind of touch on the comments there. Just now, I just kind of want to catch up with you. I'm curious, what you been working on lately, man?
What
You
have I
got
been
any
working
big
on lately? Well,
any big projects that you've been chewing away on for a while?
well, I have exactly one paying client.
Oh, okay.
And, he has. I've been working with him for at least a year now, and he's just a constant source of interesting new problems to solve. So I've been spending some of my off time or at time outside of the community working on his project. There's a lot of it's in some ways kind of standard order taking and dispatch type app work, but it's always interesting to find new ways to approach these problems. So that's kind of what I'm working on. So dispatch and order taking apps, I guess.
Nice. Okay, so you said that you have one client. Okay, so then could people hire you out, or is this just you're comfortable with the one?
Well, I can't. I think I mentioned this last time. Is I do have a disability. I am in a wheelchair. That's what you can see behind me here. And my disability really prevents me from working full time. So I'm really only part time. And in that part time, I have to work in enough time to in the community to help out the community. And the community really kind of takes precedence. So I really, although as much as I enjoy working with AppSheet and I would love to take on more work, I really am not in a position where I can devote more time to other clients. So I've got the one. I'm comfortable with that. Anything more would
Be a
put me
little too
underwater,
much.
I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Now I know you mentioned this earlier that you're comfortable discussing your disability. Do you mind what exactly is the problem?
Sure. I have multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease of the central nervous system. I was diagnosed in 2001 and was mostly okay until late 2015 when I had a flare up that put me in the hospital, and it rendered me disabled. And I've been in a wheelchair ever since. I've been homebound for all intents and purposes. And like I said, I'm only able to work part time.
Yeah.
So for a while, I was on disability or getting Social Security disability, but I found that I was able to work sufficiently that I could achieve an income. So that's what I'm doing. So thanks to AppSheet and Google for that, because they're the ones essentially supporting me. And it's not like they're doing it out of the good of their heart. It's I'd done contract work with them prior to that, and I'm able to continue doing it. So that's great.
That's cool. Yeah, that's it. One of the most amazing things about the AppSheet platform is I talk about this a lot, where like I talk about it as if AppSheet is a disruptive force, because any person that comes to find AppSheet like that invariably has a dramatic effect on their life in a positive way. Like the standard AppSheet story is I was working, looking for something to make stuff easier, found it, implemented a solution. Then I started my own business, and now my old work is now my client, and I've got a whole bunch of other ones, and like I'm going to go buy property.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It did transform my life because, for if you've never had a disability of this
magnitude.
significance like I have,
Yeah.
it really does just destroy the normalcy of your life. I mean, I was stuck. I am stuck at home. I lost the ability to touch type, so I'm down to hunting and pecking now, which has really slowed down my computer use. I've always been more of a command line kind of guy. So
okay. Oh wow.
yeah, so it hurt me a lot.
That was a
Slowed me down
real
lot.
big hit. Yeah.
So I could not do what I had been doing previously, which was systems and network engineering. And once I was disabled, I thought it would be useful to keep track of, my daily activity and stuff like that. So AppSheet was an excellent opportunity to build a tool for that. And yeah, it brought me into the community, and I love it for that. So, and I have definitely heard stories of other people who similarly have found, the personal use of AppSheet enabling for their own uses, and yeah, it allowed them to kind of branch out and use it in other ways too.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you started with creating an app to help you kind of track everything that was going on and manage stuff. I'm curious, since then, right? Have you, because like myself personally, I find myself spinning up little apps all the time. And even like I'll have friends and family where they'll be like, oh, just going on about some problem. And I'm like, mate, I could just hold on just 1 second, and just real quick and throw it up there. Right. Have you ever done anything like that? And specifically, I'm curious, was it weird?
Sure. Well, I mean, yes, I'm always constantly working on little apps to address particular problems that people have brought up primarily in the community. How would I approach that if that was a problem I needed to solve? Some of those I've shared with the people who posted. So there are a couple demo apps that I have out there for that address specific posts. There have been a couple times where people have shared their apps with me, and I've gone in and took a look at their apps and tried to help them out. I don't do that anymore, especially now that I'm actually being paid by Google to interact with the community, because I don't want anybody to think that Google is going to help them actually.
You want to send the wrong impression. Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So I don't do that anymore, but there has been times in the past when I have done that. And as is common with the type of people or the type of companies that use AppSheet, a lot of those were dispatch apps and time tracking type apps.
Sure.
I, of course, have written my own time tracking app for the work that I do for my one client.
How involved is that? I'm curious, because I know mine is it's ridiculous.
Well, you have a ridiculous client base. I mean, I have one client, so I don't need a whole lot of sophistication. And it's probably been broken half the time because I keep tinkering with it. And it's like, I wonder if I can do this with it. Not easily. So now it'll be broken for a week or two until I can get back to it. So it's always a kind of a secondary priority. Do I work on apps for friends and family? I actually try to avoid that.
Really?
I've been working, with computers for my entire career since '89, I guess, when I really started working with them. And I've had opportunities to volunteer help for friends and family. I've done some paid work for some acquaintances, and it just never quite turns out right. Because I'm such a perfectionist that I can never quite achieve what I want to achieve, and it ends up taking longer than they expected, and I'm just never comfortable with it. So I try to avoid that these days. So
I hear you. Yeah. No, I'm the same way. Like, I take the advice that you hear people say all the time where they say, don't mix, work with home and, family and friends and keep that separate. So I've done that myself. I've had a few friends and a few family members approach me where they're like, hey man, I've got this great idea for, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that is a fantastic idea. Let me connect you with somebody.
Yeah.
Over there. So yeah, I definitely know how that goes. Yeah. All right. So that's basically all I really kind of wanted to. I was really just kind of curious about, when I was watching the stream last time, I was like, man, I didn't even ask him about like, what does he do now? Like, what do you do with AppSheet? Because like everybody sees you in the community, answering questions, doing documentation stuff, and like helping in that way. But like, surely there's something else going on, And so that's all. I was just curious. Thanks for.
I do. In addition to this work I have for this customer, of course, the community is an awesome source of ideas, for problem solving and how would I do that? And to some degree, that the fact that I am disabled and because I don't have full-time work, because I don't have that daily requirement that I go spend 8 hours in the office, my schedule is very flexible.
Right.
I can just take a couple hours or maybe even a day to explore new problems and ideas that I might come across in the community. So, it's just a wonderful source of those kind of ideas. And in some ways, the disability is actually a blessing in that regard because it does.
I'm happy you said that. Oh, I'm so happy you said that. Yeah. Because I was sitting here trying to come up with a way. I'm like, man, how could I point this out that, had the disability never happened, you wouldn't be where you are in the headspace that you are. Absolutely. So that you're doing the thing that you're doing right now.
100%. Absolutely. So yes.
Yeah. I've recently had some revelations about my own life in that way as well, to where it's like, had that stuff never happened, I would never be here in the headspace that I am to do the things that I'm doing. Yeah. But thank God I am, because look at the benefit that's happening, It's I
agree 100%.
I'm with you. Well, thanks, Steve. That's all I got for now. I'm going to drop off here and we'll go to the weekly rundown, kind of go over some news type stuff, and then I'll bring you back and we can talk about them. All right.
All right. Sounds good. All right, see you then. Bye-bye.
All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties on my end. So what are we talking about? So the biggest news really to talk about this time would be there was another outage. Did you get caught by it? It was really short. It was only for an hour or so on last Friday, I believe. Let me get this news up. It was Thursday, on the 26th from 4 to 5 p.m. Central. It does seem like it was a thing that affected everybody in the world. There was people reporting from Mexico, over in Asia. And it did affect everything. Both the editor and the apps were down. It was a complete system-wide crash. Thankfully, they were on it pretty quick. Grant Stead pointed out that this is the second outage that we've had in a kind of recent time frame, but there was no post-mortem for the first one that happened, where it was kind of a bigger one that lasted a little longer. Arthur Ralu, thank you, responded. And if you're not familiar with who Arthur is, he's the project manager for AppSheet. He's basically like the CEO of the whole thing that's going on over there inside Google, in a way. You think of it that way. He's asked for him, and he's yet to receive any kind of information. And he's, as soon as he gets it, he's going to let us know. Other than that, the biggest thing that happened was, it really doesn't have anything to do with AppSheet. It has everything to do with the stuff that AppSheet uses. So Google Drive and Google Sheets both had a pretty significant release of newer features this week. For Google Drive, I'm not sure how much these things are going to come into play with like what we can do with AppSheet, but they are definitely helpful and worthy of note because the vast majority of people are integrating with these services. So what is it? So with Google Drive, what they've done is they've implemented a way to where you can share files using a temporary code. So a lot of the problems that people will have is they'll generate PDFs or a CSV or a spreadsheet or whatever, and they need to share it with somebody that's outside of the Google domain, or they're outside, they're using Microsoft or something. Can't really share with that. There was some friction inside there. This is going to make that a whole lot easier, because now what you can do is you can share your file and give somebody a temporary code so that they can access the file. That'll be helpful. We'll see. Maybe there'll be some fun stuff that we could kick into AppSheet with that. Perhaps maybe down the line we could get a feature request for being able to issue that code through an automation. I could see that coming downstream. So that's Google Drive. The other big one was Google Sheets. Now, the one with Google Sheets that really got my attention was XLOOKUP. If you're not familiar with XLOOKUP, it's almost exactly like VLOOKUP, which you might be familiar with. That's where you can say, look up this value in some other thing and give me a column, right? Okay, but the problem with VLOOKUP is it gives you the first column in the range. That's the returned value. So if you're trying to get the ID of something, the ID has to be the first value in the range, and then you can have all your other data points after it. It has to be in that format for VLOOKUP to work. XLOOKUP takes that sort of restriction out of it. You can say, look up this value in this range, and then give me this range. So it literally, you can, like for me, I never put my IDs at the very first column. They're always like buried deep in the metadata at the far end. So this is a huge thing for me because it's going to be amazing. The other things that are that came out are they're a lot more complicated. So I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of details here, but the gist of it is named functions is the name of the feature that I'm talking about here. And it basically gives you the ability to create your own custom spreadsheet formulas. Now, okay, spreadsheet formulas with AppSheet, maybe not the greatest, but in certain places, it can be a really good thing to do. It can be really helpful. And there's nothing to say that I couldn't import the data that I'm using for my AppSheet app sheets into another sheet and then do a whole bunch of stuff over there because it's a completely separate file and anyways. So named functions gives you the ability where you can create your own specific, like highly complex formulas that are doing a lot of things. And then you can just call the function. There's ways to share these with people. There's a lot of really fun things that they've released that are like super highly technical. Lambda is another thing that came about, which kind of plays with named functions. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff. So if you're curious about that, if you use Google Sheets as your data source, go and check that out. There's you can just Google for it in the description for this video. I'll put links later on. As far as rounding off some AppSheet news, there's a couple other things that happened that were kind of littler note. Some you may say this is a bigger note. The new My Apps page has come out. It's now available for everybody on a free account. Pretty soon it'll start rolling out to people that pay. If you've checked it out, if you've seen it yet, it really just kind of reformulates everything so that it looks more like what you would see inside Google Drive. There's been a lot of requests for different updates. I know one of the big ones that I've seen in there is the ability to add folders, just like you can in Google Drive, because then I could folderize my apps and organize them. But that's out. It's coming to everybody. The other thing that's happened is it's more of a bug fix, if you will. If you were cloning an app, there are certain characters that you can't use inside the name of your app, like a hashtag or the pound sign, whatever you call it. And it can only be so long. Sometimes there was these restrictions weren't being caught. And so one of the bug fixes that they put out is that's now a thing that's going to be caught. So if you try and use special characters, it says no special characters. If it's too long, it says it's too long. I've run into this with my sample apps because my sample app names can get a little long because I'm trying to describe what's going on, but I only got 30 characters now, so it's like a tweet. But anyways, those are the main things that have happened this week with AppSheet. Let's move on. And we've got Steve back with us. Steve, you still there? Yep, you still there.
Yep.
So did you, have you had a chance to look at the new My Apps page at all? Do you have a free account?
I do have a free account, and I just looked at the new My Apps page yesterday, and I think it looks fantastic.
It's pretty nice. It's pretty clean, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. I like the list formats. It's a lot more compact, and even the icon or the tile display is a lot easier to use than the old one. So yeah, plus one.
Yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Yep.
What about when I was doing the weekly rundown there? You seemed pretty excited about Lambda. You familiar with Lambda?
If it's what I understand it to be, or what I believe it is. I was thinking it's like self-referential functions, basically, or anonymous functions, which are a very advanced programming technique.
When I was reading the announcement, it was one of these where it was like I kind of went, "What
is that a good idea?
What am I supposed to do with this? Hold on!" And I had to think about this for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, as an advanced programming tool, it's neat, but it's
where are you going?
It's kind of like regular expressions. Regular expressions are a fantastic tool. They are extremely powerful, but boy, they are not the kind of thing you really want the novice user to be working with, because the novice user will get so confused and have so many problems, and it's just
this guy right here.
Yeah,
I've had that problem. I've been there. Oh man.
So Lambda functions are the kind of thing where your more advanced Excel users or programmers who are using Excel are going to see that, and they're going to love it. And if they try sharing any of their the formulas that they use it with, the novice users are going to get excited because they're like, "Oh, look at this neat new functionality somebody has shared with me." They're going to have no idea how it works, and that's just oof. Supportability becomes an issue at that point, but it's a neat feature.
Yeah, I can see some of the same problems that we experience in the AppSheet community, where people get like a massive select statement that's solving some problem, but like that's not the answer. Like that's
automation.
Oh yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah, I've seen so many people where they're doing so many things through automation where it's like, well, why not just make a formula that does that?
Yep.
Or an action that does that? Like push the button and just be done, instead of trying to figure out all the complicated. On the other side of this, though, so I opened up the post in like the official wording that they have here is, so Lambda creates and returns a custom function given a set of names and a formula expression, which uses them. The formula expression can be calculated by calling the return function with as many values as the names declared. Like, I can see this being really, really helpful, because you could have those spreadsheet wizards that know how to do all of that craziness. Yeah. And they can make a really crazy thing. And then now it's just call my crazy function with these parameters.
Yep. But it's just like with AppSheet, you're leaving the no code type of experience.
Big time. Yeah.
Right. And that is, Lambda expressions are absolutely programming level. They're code. They're programming level expressions or formulas. So I wouldn't necessarily encourage the average Excel user to tinker with those too much, especially in your AppSheet apps.
Definitely not. Yeah. Definitely not.
Else, get familiar with them and come back later.
Yeah, that's definitely having spreadsheet formulas with your AppSheet app is generally a big no-no. So, yeah. But all right, I was just curious, what you would thought about that. So moving on to the next little segment here, the real thing that I kind of want to deep dive here, right, is action looping, right? So, of all of the videos on my YouTube channel, the build video that I have for action looping is the one that's been watched the most. And if you go look in the community, like a lot of the questions are usually around looping. And so let's dive into that. I'm curious, do you remember, because like you were the guy that created that original post, the very first implementation of looping, that was all your idea. And that post that you did like was crazy. Like it wasn't just a simple take this list and minus what's been done and we're good. Like you had a whole bunch of stuff inside there. Can you kind of take us back to that moment and like what was that all about?
That was kind of a mind blasting day, which if the text that I posted in releasing that post, I said like, I'm kind of wasted at this point. I'll circle back and document this at some later time.
Right.
Because I had spent hours trying to get that to work. And it really, and even by the time I got it all worked out, it still hadn't quite settled in my mind exactly what I just did. I managed to get it documented and I got it reproducible, but even still in my head, it hadn't quite settled. It's like after you cook something in the microwave, they say, let it set for a minute. It's right. Kind of that. I took it out of the microwave and it still needed to set to fully cook in my head. So, but I think what I've been trying to remember exactly what prompted it. And I want to say that what I had been doing was I was frustrated because I had a grouped action and I wanted to invoke another grouped action from the first grouped action. And you can't do that. You can't have one grouped action directly invoke another grouped action, which is extremely frustrating because coming from with having a programming background or programming education, I expect to be able to do that. That's a procedure flaw, right?
Right.
So I expect to be able to do that. And it was very frustrating. And I didn't quite understand why they would have chosen to do that. And I was thinking there's got to be a way to work around this. Well, maybe I can use a reference action from within a grouped action to invoke a different grouped action. and that worked. And it occurred to me that, well, what if the grouped action that I used included the first action, the first grouped action? And that would be recursion. And I know that having learned about recursion in school, in college, that recursion is kind of a dicey issue. If the underlying software that is performing the recursion is not designed to handle the recursion, you can have problems because you might say overwrite your data values, your variables that the function uses. So I didn't know if that would work. So I tried it and it worked, and it kind of blew my mind because, I guess at the time I was like, wow, they actually thought about this and they designed it to accommodate this. So they must intend it to be used this way. And I'm kind of surprised that this isn't documented anywhere that you can do this. Now, as time has gone on, I suspect it wasn't so much a deliberate design choice to support recursion, that it was probably just the way they implemented it happened to support recursion.
I kind of get that feeling too. With some of the discussions I've had with like Adam about this.
They're kind of, they kind of like, I can't believe some of the crazy stuff these people in the community are doing with the actions and stuff for looping. And so, I think that, they didn't quite expect it to be used that way. But so once I realized that you could do recursion, I realized, well, you can implement loops with recursion. I wonder if I could do loops. And yes, I can.
It was.
But boy, does it take some work. Because you have to have a minimum of 3 actions to implement the loop. And I think originally I implemented it 4. So later on I simplified it to 3, but you still need 3 actions, and it's still kind of convoluted. You have to have a reference action that reinvokes the first action that brought you into the loop. You have to make sure you have your conditional in there to exit out of the loop, because if you don't, it will go on infinitely and crash your browser or crash the app. So you have to handle all this stuff. Now, all of these, or those issues are all issues that are addressed in education and computer science. So, those are things that I was all kind of aware that I had to look for. And for some people, I'm sure they're very intuitive. But so once I kind of worked out all that kind of stuff, it then came down, can I reproduce it? Can I do it again? And then can I document it? And can I then reproduce it from the documentation? And, AppSheet is not the easiest to document, because it is, you have to use a visual interface editor. It's not just a matter of, say, type, here are the commands you need to type.
Yeah.
So I had to design the documentation in a way that would be easy to follow, and I'll do it on screen. And it was long. It was a lot of steps. And I knew there had to be some examples. So, because not everybody likes to just read stepwise documentation. They want to be able to go look at it and see how it works. So I had to put all that stuff together, because I felt that if I didn't provide a good, tidy package, it was just going to fall apart, and other people were going to wade in with their approach. And I felt like it get very confusing very fast. So I wanted a nice, tidy package. So that's how it started. It started with the desire to invoke a grouped action from an existing grouped action. And then the realization that that would then allow me to re-invoke the first action, and re-invoking the first action meant potential for recursion, and recursion meant looping, and looping is something everybody had been asking for. So bang, there it is.
Man. Yeah, it is really a very unintuitive type of setup that you're doing. And I remember when you first posted it, it took me like months to wrap my head around that. I remember I kept posing questions. I'm like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand this part. And it's like, you just got to figure it out. Just keep going. You'll get it.
Yeah. And there have been times where I've had need to re-implement loops, and I'm like, wait, let me go back to that post, because I couldn't even remember. It's taken a long time for it to settle in exactly what needs to do. It is convoluted. It is not the way one normally thinks when designing an AppSheet app. You definitely have to think differently.
Definitely have to think differently. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then if you're trying to translate that loop from like an actual client-side loop, and you got to try and figure out, well, my loop's making 400 records. I don't really want to do that client-side. So then you got to try and think, well, how can I change everything so that I can execute that through parallel in automation? Yes. And that's like, that's a whole nother ball of wax right there.
And the complexities, you can quickly realize that what is offered as a no-code tool can very quickly escalate in complexity to something that is definitely requires a more code-oriented mentality.
Yeah, that's the 100. Yeah. The interface is no code, but you're still doing straight up software development, and you need to approach that from a software development data science standpoint, because that's what you're building. And
absolutely.
But that's one of the things that I call it a curse. I don't know. It's a curse, and it's also what makes it amazing, is that AppSheet makes it to where people can get so far without any of that knowledge, without, they can get so far. It's unbelievable, some of the systems that I've seen people build, and then they eventually come and discover me, and they're like, oh, let me schedule a thing, and I'll I'll just be in awe of this system that they've made, because it's all hacked together, tape and spit and glue, but it totally works, and it does everything that it's supposed to do. It's amazing what AppSheet can, love it.
One of the in a lot of modern computer systems, like there's constantly these new devices that are being released that have new computer architectures, hardware architectures, and one of the things that a lot of computer hobbyists and enthusiasts like to do is find a way to make old software run on the new hardware. There is a game called Doom.
Oh yeah. And
kind of one of the a common goal of hardware enthusiasts is to see if they can get Doom, the game, running on new hardware that isn't designed to run games at all.
Right.
And they make that happen. And I'm not saying you can run Doom in AppSheet, but it is interesting to realize that you could make some relatively sophisticated software in AppSheet. You could use some very sophisticated programming paradigms and approaches using AppSheet. It would be very difficult. I mean, you'd be going down to like a low level of programming, but it is possible. And there have been times when I thought it might be kind of interesting to create like a state machine or a stack-based application. You'd very quickly run into some of the limitations of things like, having to update your data source because you don't have any local variables. So you have to use data sources for all your variables, and that things like a stack machine or a state machine would require constant manipulation of your data source. So you'd have a constant stream of updates, and you'd run into quotas and all that kind of stuff. But it's doable. It's possible. You could do that kind of stuff, and it's kind of scary. I'm kind of waiting for somebody to try that. I'd like to see that.
I've seen a lot of people try a lot of stuff inside AppSheet where, you just kind of sit there and go, wow, I can't believe you actually did the thing that you were shooting for. That's amazing.
You did it. You're, what are you calling the temporary variable table? What do you call it? Hot linking? Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah. I just call it hot linking. Yeah. But yeah, having like a temporary, having a field on your table that's literally there for nothing. It's just a text field that's hidden. I can use it for whatever I need.
Yeah. And it's a way to pass information between different actions or tables. I mean, I think probably typically through actions, but you want to pass a variable that isn't used for anything else. It's just necessary for a particular action, and you want to pass it. And you want somebody else, some other action, to be able to reach out and grab it and use that for something. And that is actually very sophisticated programming technique. I mean, that's what's called a mailbox in programming paradigms or processes. And I myself have looked at that. I call them relays. I actually have a separate table, a relay table. And
I've recently implemented that, a relay table with an app that I was working on, because I was in a situation where I had to get a piece of information from one table to another, but there was absolutely no connection between the two, nor could I create one because there was a complete separation between the two. Yeah. And eventually I settled on, well, I could just write that value into a table that's got like one column that's just, let me put whatever I want inside it. And then I can just grab that and delete the record. There we go. Problem solved.
Yep. That's what you got to do.
I've been using, I did that in this one app, and like the thing that's like, I'm not sure about it. You know what I mean? Like that seems like it seems like a really clean and a really universal way to solve a lot of problems. Yeah. That's why I really like that. The traditional method that I would use for something like that is the hot linking thing, where I just flag the record saying this is the one that I'm dealing with, and then it goes over into a slice, and then I can grab the slice value from anywhere.
Yep.
I don't know which would be better, flagging, because I could see a lot of benefits from the other one because you're not modifying the actual record in the system.
Right.